This is the Self Storage Podcast, where we share the knowledge and skills from the industry's leading investors, developers, and operators to help you launch and grow your self-storage business. I'm your host, Scott Meyers, and over the past 16 years, we have acquired, developed, converted, and syndicated over 2 million square feet of self-storage nationwide with the help of my incredible team at selfstorageinvesting.com, who has helped thousands of people achieve greatness in self-storage. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Self-Storage Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Meyers. Now, nobody likes to pay taxes, but fortunately for us, as self-storage operators, we get to reduce our tax obligation more than any other asset class by performing a cost segregation study and then reclassifying portions of the property to accelerate our depreciation. My guest today is Chad Neihaus, the Regional Director for KBKG, one of the nation's top firms that performs these studies and ultimately lowers the overall tax basis for commercial properties. Chad has over 7 years of experience working with CPAs and clients for tax-related services, including cost segregation, R&D Tax Credits, and green energy tax incentives. Chad received his Bachelors of Business Administration in Marketing, Management, and Real Estate from the University of West Georgia, and in his spare time, Chad enjoys playing golf, boating, and spending time with family and friends. So without further ado, let's dive into my conversation on tax reduction strategies with Chad Neihaus. Hey Chad, welcome to the show. The
Hey Scott, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm glad we were able to chat yet again and also now share some of our conversations and most importantly, well, this episode is going to be a role reversal. I've given them a little bit of background on yourself, so if you would, why don't you fill in the gaps from the bio and let us know
Whitney Sewell of LifeBridge Capital and his podcast,
and,
The Real Estate Syndication
it's been a busy
Show,
time
is
for
the
us in the
premier
cost
podcast for
segregation
real estate
industry,
syndicators and passive
especially with
investors
the
alike. And in this
pandemic
podcast, Whitney asks about my background and how I moved from single-family rentals to apartments and ultimately into self-storage and how we've
obviously
grown
looking for an increase in cash flow,
and we also talk about the predictability of the asset class and the first steps that someone can take to get into
I've been doing
business,
this for
as well
a
as
few
how to
years
avoid the
with
mistakes that so many
KBKG,
first-time
manage our
investors
business
make. The balance of our
development
time was spent
and
discussing the
client
current economy we
relationships
find
in the
ourselves
Southeast
in
market,
and how we
so
are
a
planning
total
to
of
take
about
advantage
9
of the perfect
states.
storm that we find
And
ourselves
we
in.
have a full
As self-storage
operating
actually
office
profits from
in
trauma by way of
Atlanta,
the
but we also
pandemic
have
and
9
ultimately
offices
the
across
looming
the
recession.
country, making
So
us
without
one of
further
the
ado,
largest
let's dive into my
independent
interview,
firms
aka
in our
Whitney Sewell's
space.
interview
So we
of
focus
myself.
exclusively on engineering-based tax services. So what that means is, cost segregation, R&D tax credit consulting, as well as some green energy tax incentives as well. But we were established in 1999, and we currently have the most certified members from the American Society of Cost Segregation Professionals on staff of any firm in the nation. And the ASCSP is really an organization that provides continuing education, member certification, and a code of ethics and technical standards for our industry. And all of our cost segregation studies are supervised by an ASCSP certified member. But that's just a little bit more background about myself and KBKG and what we're up to these days.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I wanted to, I suppose we'll dive right in. One of the burning questions that I had is, most people know about the benefit of cost segregation in the terms of accelerated depreciation. So let's, if you would, let's handle this in two parts. Let's expand on that a little bit more for those who may be new to this as to the benefits to an individual owner. And then if you would answer that in terms of, as we discussed earlier, we do a lot of syndications where we bring in private equity partners. They get ownership, they get shares, and how at the end of the year, the benefit that they have also of getting that accelerated depreciation. So give us an idea of, ways you've used that or maybe some other syndicators and promoters are utilizing that to make it even more of an advantage for people to invest with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to kind of start off with the beginning part of your question, cost segregation, to give you a bit of background. So it's really long been regarded as one of the best commonly used tax strategies available to self-storage owners and investors to immediately reduce tax by accelerating depreciation, deductions, and really deferring these federal and state income taxes. So whether you acquired a facility or you're planning to buy a facility or you're embarking on a building or replacement program, cost segregation should be part of your strategy to maximize cash flow. Essentially, a cost segregation analysis allows an owner to depreciate certain types of a building components and site improvements over a shorter depreciation recovery period that is usually, a typical 39 years, generally used for the structural elements of a self-storage facility. And so the benefit to the owner is really simple. It's by deferring taxes through the use of accelerated depreciation, owners, can retain more cash. But for syndicators, as you mentioned, anybody that's looking for investors into a project or a property, essentially the shareholder allocation, whatever their ownership percentage may be, it directly flows through and is allocated the same way as far as these deductions go that are generated through a cost segregation study. And self-storage facilities in general are a great candidate for cost segregation because you look at the depreciable tax basis of the property. Of course, that's the purchase price or construction costs, excluding the land value. That depreciable basis amount, you're typically looking at a 25 to 45% reclass percentage into a shorter recovery life. And so if you're looking at that big picture, 25 to 45% of the total cost depreciable basis of the property is actually going to be able to be taken as a deduction in the first year that the property is placed in service. And that's through 100% bonus depreciation, which is now at play and was passed through the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act back in 2017. So it's an immediate tax savings for any investor that wants to invest in these properties and a project.
Well, we've known what it means for us, and now we've been beating that drum and letting our investor partners know that that is also an advantage for them as well. And that if for those that aren't investing in a real estate, they don't have that depreciation allowance for any other investment. You can't do it with stocks, bonds, or precious metals, or anything else for that matter. So once again, just a clear advantage that we have. But you had mentioned anywhere from 25 to 45%, and that's what we've seen for both ourselves and some of our students and partners that you've been working with as well, Chad. But tell us how that compares to other asset classes, say multifamily, industrial, perhaps. I mean, right now, even I suppose they're not the most popular asset classes, but compared to medical or hospitality, gaming, how does self-storage stack up in terms of, the benefit of having a cost seg analysis done?
Yeah, self-storage is definitely towards the top as far as, driving the most benefit in a study. Obviously, any type of property that has very little movable or replaceable type of components are not going to be good candidates. So that's, industrial or warehouses, that just have cement floors or essentially empty shelves that they're throwing in, like a distribution center, for example. Those aren't going to drive as much benefit as a multifamily or retail or medical office or just general office building would drive. They're not going to drive as much benefit as these types of properties that have more reusable, movable property and 1245 personal property. So self-storage facilities typically have extensive site work such as paving, curbing, fencing, lighting, retaining walls, and storm drainage and other utilities. And these items are specifically identified by the IRS as property that can be depreciated over 15 years instead of 39 years, that is. So furthermore, there are also systems that can be depreciated over 5 or 7 years, such as movable partitions. And of course, self-storage facilities have those partition walls are oftentimes 5-year property, but also any furniture, fixtures, and equipment, CCTV security systems, controlled access gates, any computerized locking systems or alarm systems, etc. These are just a few examples of 5 and 7 year property that, once again, you can take 100% bonus depreciation on these components and depreciate them in the current tax year or whichever year the property is placed in service.
Mm-hmm. So Chad, what do things look like afterwards? We've taken the bonus depreciation. We've done this over 5 years or in the first 5 years. And if you're planning to hold instead of selling a project in that time frame, what does it look like afterwards? And from a tax standpoint, do the benefits fall off, or is that something that's put in place that you can enjoy then for years to come because you've already done the analysis?
Yeah, so really the purpose and primary goal of a cost segregation study is to drive deductions sooner. A cost seg isn't going to create any new deductions. They're just front loading the deductions that are available to you, right? And so really, through a cost segregation study, you're going to see a tremendous amount of deductions, obviously additional to tax deductions in the first year. We always recommend that a client hold on to the property for at least 3 to 5 years after doing the cost segregation or after the property is placed in service. You can always go back and do a cost segregation, further down the road. I mean, really, we can go back to 1987 to do a cost segregation study. Now, will we? Probably not, because once again, it's a time value money concept. So the purpose of the cost segregation is that, a dollar today is worth a heck of a lot more than a dollar 39 years from now. Mm-hmm. And so, so when you're talking about holding on to the property, definitely want to make sure you're holding on to it 3 to 5 years. Otherwise, there could be the opportunity for a recapture tax. Mm-hmm. Of course, everything's for sale for a price, right? But, at least as long as you're holding on to it for 3 years, the recapture is going to be minimal. Mm-hmm. But, I do have a case study. If you're, have a $5 million, purchase price of a self-storage facility, you're going to see at least, $1 million in additional deductions in the first year. And that's just incredible tax savings, right?
That is absolutely incredible. Is that typical, you would say, Chad? And if so, maybe give us the best example of how, utilizing a cost seg analysis has benefited one of your clients even more than you would have expected, or even better than that example, or maybe there was a different twist or a different strategy that was utilized that maybe could be uncovered that you could share.
Yeah, so I mean, especially on acquired property, it definitely makes the most sense to do a cost segregation study on acquired property. I'd say about 70% of our business as a firm is on acquisitions. And the reason being, with newly constructed property, there's definitely, some opportunity to do, what's called like a desktop review of the total costs that are incurred during the project. And you can probably pull out 50% of the most obvious 15-year land improvements or 5-year personal property. But, and then, you're getting most of the benefit just by doing a desktop review. However, through an acquisition, you typically don't have access to the site plans or anything like that. And so having a full engineering analysis and an engineer come out and do a site inspection to visit the property and do the study is going to drive significant benefit. One example, I guess, is actually a self-storage facility here in North Georgia that we recently completed a study on. I think we are estimating 20% on the front end. We're always in the business of under-promising and over-delivering, right? So our benefit estimates are somewhat on the lower end, and they're conservative, just to make sure we are over-delivering. But, I think we estimated 20% reclass into 5 and 15-year property on a 2018 acquisition. It just so happens we ended up getting about 52% total reclass. And so it was of a $4 million acquisition, you're talking about more than $2 million in additional deductions year one. It's just one example of a self-storage facility recently completed. So.
Wow, that's fantastic, Chad.
Yep.
So let's, and again, we don't go into these projects. We know that we're going to be able to get some savings, and so we wouldn't want to build anything, maybe even 25% to 50% reclassification more into a business model by any stretch. But are people utilizing you on the front end at all, Chad, and saying, hey, I'm getting ready to purchase this facility, performing a desktop study to say, hey, what could I expect in the first 5 years, so that they, as they model out their projections and they're doing their underwriting in the first 5 years, is that a good time for them to bring you into the mix, even pre-acquisition?
Absolutely. And we get that request all the time. So to tell you, about 90% of our business actually comes through way of CPA referral, or, we're working directly with the tax preparer for the client. And so a lot of times they're using us as a tax planning strategy. But, for clients like yourself that are, looking to invest in a property, absolutely, they're leveraging us to prepare a detailed cost to benefit analysis that'll show the estimated purchase price, estimated depreciable basis of the property. And they're using this as not only a tax planning tool, but an opportunity to attract other investors and ultimately close the deal. So, yeah, no, we do that pretty frequently.
Well, Chad, if you would, several of our guests that we've had on recently, I've asked them to get out their crystal ball, dust it off, and take a look at the industry as a whole, what do you see coming on down the pike for our industry on a macro level for the end of 2020 and then into 2021? What should investors be looking for in terms of development and or acquisitions as you see it?
Yeah, so I mean, I think right now with the current economic situation and with the pandemic, I think there's a lot of unknowns right now, especially in the commercial real estate space. I think self-storage facilities are going to fare pretty well. I mean, they've been a pretty stagnant and consistent industry for commercial investors, and I think it's going to continue to be so. I think obviously with retail and anybody in hospitality, they might see a little bit of a dip. But one concern, I guess, one of the things that we're hoping doesn't happen is obviously with the economic situation this year and the 2020 tax year, we're hopeful that people are still going to need the deductions that are driven through a cost segregation study. I think self-storage facilities, of course, are going to need the deduction. They're still seeing business growth and they're doing well, but commercial property investors and these management companies that are investing in not only office space but these retail strip centers and other hospitality properties like restaurants, for example, they may not need the deductions because they might be taking significant losses this year. So it just depends, right? There's a lot of unknowns right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That is for certain. So we are keeping our ear to the ground. And one of the benefits that I have sitting in this chair is talking with folks like yourself that, see different in all angles of self-storage and where we're heading as an industry. So Chad, I appreciate so much once again the time that you're taking out today and for the care that you're taking with the folks that we send over to you, our students, our joint venture partners, and everybody's had nothing but glowing reviews about the work that you've been doing for them. So once again, I want to thank you for that. But before we head out here, any tools that you've been using recently or resources in your everyday life, like even an Evernote or an alternative platforms or something just to help us all work a little bit better that you've utilized that has helped you recently that you would like to share with the folks?
Yeah, I mean, with everybody, working virtual or most people working virtual, obviously having access to a Zoom or Ring Central has been essential. But also, it's just staying in front of clients is often and as best as we can during these times. Mm-hmm. Just staying on the phone consistently has obviously been the best resource for me. But just preparing cost to benefit analysis is one thing I wanted to add, Scott, is that it's a free analysis for us to gather some additional or initial information about the property, some basic information, such as the property address, the estimated purchase price of the property, estimated square footage, things like that. And then we can prepare a benefit estimate and our fee associated with the project at no cost to the client. And so just one thing to keep in mind, it's always a free initial analysis to get the ball rolling and if you're thinking about doing a cost segregation study. So.
Well, and absolutely everybody should look into this period, not only because you can benefit greatly anywhere to up to a 50% reclassification, but it just makes sense anytime that we're embarking upon a new development and or acquisition, we're always looking for ways to be able to maximize that investment. And this is definitely one of them, which is the reason why I had Chad on here, and his entire team just has done an incredible job for us and again with our partners. So Chad, if you would, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you to just connect and talk about some of the projects they have coming up as well as a free analysis?
Sure. So you can call me directly. My number is 678-996-5196. Once again, 678-996-5196. Or you can just email me. It's chad.neihaus@kbkg.com. And my last name is spelled Niehaus.
All right, Chad, once again, thanks so much for your time today, and looking forward to hopefully seeing you back at one of our masterminds here very soon when we get back in the same room again together. But in the meantime, stay safe and appreciate your time again today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott.
All right. Thanks, Chad.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening as always. Now, we're going to be talking about topics like this that are on target for the times that we find ourselves in, so it is important that you are listening to this podcast every single week, because the guests that I'm going to be bringing on and the topics we will be covering are relevant to what we are all going through right now. And it's just going to get better and better and better in terms of the content that we're going to be discussing, and it's going to be more timely than ever. So please, make sure you subscribe to the show and make sure you're paying attention to these episodes as they are coming out during this period, as I am specifically going out and finding guests who are providing really valuable information you need right now. So thank you so much. We'll see you next week.